Today's sponsor is Loot Crate. For less than $20 a month, Loot Crate gives the geek in you a special treat every month. Loot Crate's a subscription box service with $40+ worth of geek, gamer, and pop culture gear, collectibles, apparel, comics, etc. delivered to your mailbox every month. This month, they're celebrating all the monsters you can fit in your pocket and the ones who need some crazy circle drawing skills to bring to the mortal realm. This month's crate features an exclusive collectible they've told us is the most important object in pretty much the whole universe. Plus, awesome items from Blizzard, Kid Robot, and more. You have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive that month's crate, and when the cutoff happens, that's it. It's over. So go to lootcrate.com/KFGames and enter code KFGames to save $3 on your new subscription today. What's up, guys? Welcome to the first ever episode 36 of the Kind of Funny Gamescast. As always, I'm Tim Gettys, joined by the coolest dudes in video games, Colin Moriarty and Greg Miller.
Yeah.
It's good to be here with you today.
I'm happy we're back.
Yeah, you guys are back. We missed you last week.
We were dead last week.
I had to fucking put Nick
back.
Scarpino on this show.
I know. I'm so sorry for that.
Jesus.
One of my favorite things about having Nick on the show is just being able to introduce him. Just being like, and Nick. Because every time he just does that thing where he just looks at me and like it hurts him a little bit.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Well,
he I like hurt him a lot.
He should stop, paying attention to his wife and start playing more games.
It's one of the.
He
it's
still
one of
hasn't
the
bought a
author.
Vita.
Yeah. No.
Sort it
Did
out.
you guys see that the video that it wasn't Tom Hawkins that made it? Someone else in the community made it of a supercut of Nick. Like it was just me and you talking about Game Boy Advance
And he's
games,
like totally
and the
spacing
camera,
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nick just spaces out, and then the camera just zooms in on him.
And they like do Vietnam flashbacks and then naked women and stuff. Yeah, it was great.
Oh man,
I like to imagine that's what's going on in Nick's brain all the time.
it is. I mean, it's definitely nothing. It's not video games. I can
Definitely
tell-
not
tell
video
you that
games.
much.
Well, now it is. He's hooked on Metal Gear.
He is.
He yelled at you and Kevin today to stop talking about Metal Gear because you're past him.
Yeah, even though I don't think we are.
But you know how it is when you're like, when he's like, you guys
hears
are like,
something
wait,
that he
how
doesn't
did you
know.
get that guy out of that? He's like, stop. And you're like, well, that's every mission, Nick. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like that big of a spoiler
Yeah,
that there's
exactly.
guys you need to find in Metal Gear.
Stop it.
So it's gonna be hard not to talk about Metal Gear this week.
Metal Gear's awesome.
I'm sure we're going to at
You're
some
hooked on
point.
Metal Gear.
Yeah, Metal Gear's not one of the topics. It's been a topic a lot recently.
Sure.
Sick of hearing about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it though.
It's going to come up.
Yeah.
Again. Don't worry about that.
The first topic's Mad Max, but you can't talk about Mad Max without talking about Metal Gear, as far as I'm concerned.
It's true.
So you're gonna-
Without Metal Gear, there would be no Mad Max.
Exactly. That's kind of how
That's-
things
that's
work.
as far
Metal
as
This
I
Gear
episode,
begot Mad Max. Mad Max begot Rebecca.
Are you
it's
done?
close. This episode's brought to you by Volume. Shout out to Mike Bethel. Yeah, it continues
Still waiting on
because he
that
got
Vita
2 months
version,
on
Mike.
that Patreon.
Still waiting on the Vita version.
Maybe by the time all the shout outs are done, it'll be out.
The anger. No, did you see how well it sold?
No.
It's already done more. It's already done as much as Thomas Was Alone did in its first 6 months. I want
Holy
to say.
shit.
I didn't see anything about it.
I'll check
That's
Tom-
awesome,
I'm
man.
gonna check Mike's Twitter.
That's very cool.
I
It's
don't get
available on
that
PS4, soon to be Vita, PC, and Mac. For more information, follow @VolumeGame on Twitter. So go do that. Tell them I sent you. It'll be a fun old time.
Tell him we sent you. Sound like, kind of funny.
specifically
I like to
me.
imagine that's the reason it's doing so well.
I think it's me specifically. Greg.
Well,
yeah, you haven't seen the tweets. I have
Oh
seen
man,
the
Mike
tweets.
tweets a lot. That's gonna be hard to get back to. That's
It's gonna be
bro.
good. The first topic of the day is why you need to play Mad Max. This is brought up by one Colin Moriarty.
Well, I figured that we can't do a proper review of it because no one else is going to play it. So, but I did want to talk about it because people enjoyed the episodes, the little clips we did of Until Dawn and Metal Gear Solid 5, in which we just talked about the games and why we liked them. So, I figure we'll just I'll present the game to you guys just like we did with those, and then you can ask questions and air your comments and concerns about just a fantastic game.
That's my
Mad
first
Max.
question, actually. Is since technically this is going up to, we're recording today,
Right.
but it'll go up later. Are you ready to declare it Game of the Decade? Because anybody who's been watching Colin and Greg Live knows that it went from Mad Max is okay, Mad Max is good, Mad Max is fantastic today in real time. Tomorrow will clearly be Game of the Year.
I never said it was okay. I always said it was good. So Mad Max is an open world third person game by Avalanche, the proper Avalanche studio. So I mean there's 2 studios now at Avalanche. The American team's doing Just Cause. So the team up in Scandinavia is doing this game.
Did Mad Max.
And it's based on the Mad Max lore, kind of. You play as Max, but it's just like any Mad Max movie. You really don't need to know what's going on in the story to understand what the world, like the stakes of the world. I'd always say, especially with Fury Road, but I think even with the trilogy, that Mad Max doesn't really have a plot. It's just about the world.
Survival.
And yeah, it's that's what's so cool about it is that it's very. I feel like the first one is very plot heavy, but it's more about the world.
Sure.
I think, and like what happens in that world and stuff like that, and how quickly it decays, which I think is cool because a lot of post-apocalyptic stories are about, like The Road, for instance, is about like we don't know what happened and it's sometime afterwards, or like a couple decades afterwards, or The Last of Us is a couple decades afterwards, or Fallout's hundreds of years later. But with Mad Max, it seems to happen. The disaster is nondescript, all encompassing, and seems to happen pretty quick. So the game is a lot of fun, and I think that it's being somewhat criminally overlooked by a lot of people. And I understand Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm sure, is probably a better
Kind
game.
of a big deal.
But I think that Mad Max stands up pretty nicely on its own. I'm not quite sure why they decided to release it on the same day as Metal Gear. I think they had plenty of time to not do that. If they released it a couple weeks earlier, I think more people would have played it. It would have sold many more copies probably. But the game combines some Batman-like combat, I think dumbed down a little bit from Batman, but I personally don't feel like Batman. I know people like Batman. That's great. I enjoy playing those games too. I don't find the combat deep at all in those games. A lot of people.
So this is dumbed down based on what you already said is not deep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. You're basically just mashing the button. And I know people are like, well, you can do this, this, and this in Batman. I'm like, well, if the game doesn't force you to do it, you don't have to do anything. You know?
Yeah.
If the game wants to be clever, it should force you to be clever. This game doesn't make any pretenses about being clever. You're basically just hitting the square button to attack and then hitting the triangle button when someone tries to attack you to counter them.
Gotcha.
Circle to kind of roll out of the way and stuff like that. So it's very basic, but I find the combat to be quite visceral and quite satisfying. Mad Max has this thing called a fury meter, where you like the more combo you get, like you get more and more angry, basically more powerful in your attacks. You start healing yourself as you attack. He does things like body slam people and do all. It's actually quite. For as simple as it is in premise, it's actually quite simple. You also have a shotgun, but you have very limited ammo, so you don't have to use it. And I don't use it really at all.
What about the enemies you're going up against? Do they have guns?
None of them that I fought yet have guns, except for snipers. They have guns.
Sure.
But everyone's ammo is somewhat scarce. There might be enemies in the future with shotguns or something like that. But people have like baseball bats and just use fists and brass knuckles and stuff. Now, the one thing I think is really great about Mad Max is its style. And I was telling Greg that I think that no game makes a desert look prettier. This isn't technically a desert. It used to be ocean, I guess. But than like except for Journey, than Mad Max. Like the game is actually really beautiful. And there's actually like stunning vistas and really quite a lot of time put into the environments, and I think the environment's really cool. And also the enemies are cool because what's so fascinating to me about Mad Max's world is that everyone's fucking crazy. It reminds me a lot of what I've read and heard about theories about Batman, about how everyone's insane in that world, even Batman.
Yeah.
And it's just a level of how insane or not insane you are.
Sure.
And that's kind of the case in this world. Like Max is just as crazy in many ways as everyone else in the world.
Interesting.
It's just that everyone else in the world has lost their minds. And so you get a lot of really cool enemy types and people painting their faces and just fighting with whatever and eating dog food to survive and maggots and all sorts of things. It's just a really dead and dire world. So it's cool to explore that. I understand why some people are not paying attention to it, but I think that the game's fun. There's a lot to do. It's very inspired, I think, by Ubisoft games in terms of big worlds in which you, especially Far Cry, I think, in which you kind of go from territory to territory and kind of unlock things in those territories and take over forts and destroy things and kind of slowly bring it back under your control.
So you're talking about you understand why people are overlooking it. Mm-hmm. Talk about, do you understand why reviewers didn't like it? Why it got middling scores?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, no. I actually, I've talked to you about, I think people are being unusually hard on this game.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, people are entitled not to like the game. I mean, if people don't like the game, that's fine. I'm not calling anyone in the question about that. But the general way I've heard people talk about the game is like, I'm a little confused about why people feel a certain way about it. For instance, I've read a lot about how it's like very samey and some of the character models are the same or some of the places you go are the same. And I'm like, first of all, I've not really found that, especially with the locations. I think the locations are quite diverse. But even if that's the case, like we loved Fallout 3 with its 4 character models and its like 3 interiors. And a world, frankly, the Capital Wasteland, frankly, a much less compelling world than this. So, and the same thing with New Vegas. And I love those games very much. I'm not saying these games are as good as Fallout. I'm saying that those worlds hold nothing.
They have repetition.
Nothing compared to like the Mad Max world in terms of how dire it is. So yeah, like I think people,
do you think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it might be a product of people, and this is what I've been predicting for a long time, is people are getting tired of open world games. And I'm kind of getting tired of them too, but I think that I like what this particular world holds for me.
Do you think that the reason people are being hard on this one, you're comparing it to Fallout, you're comparing it to Just Cause, these different things, is there anything Mad Max excels at? You're talking about the combat is repetitive, you know what I mean? It's even dumbed down versus Batman, which you don't like. The environments are repetitive. Is there a story that's bringing it all together that makes it awesome?
Well, so I think that first of all, I think the environments are repetitive because the world's fucking dead. So what are you supposed to look at? This is the one thing I said about Mad Max that I think resonated with me as a Mad Max fan, a fan of the lore, but also just a fan of the game, is that this might just have been as good as they could have done, because the world of Mad Max there's nothing funny about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, and there's no normal people in it. It's not like Fallout where people are like trying to make lead kind of normal lives and stuff like that. And there's like kind of a comedic edge to it. Like, I don't find that in Mad Max's world. The world's fucking dead and everyone's trying to kill each other. They're eating each other. You know, they're like, it's just a decaying, totally collapsing world full of sandstorms and awful weather, and things turn on a dime. Now, you were talking about the story. There is a story, and I don't think the story is very important. I don't think the story is very compelling. The one thing I like about the story more than anything else are the little things you find called history relics, which are pictures and stuff and like notes that you find where it shows the world before it decayed or while it was decaying, and how the world remained normal even when it was decaying until like a turning point happened in which everything kind of fell apart. And I like it because Max doesn't really speak very much in the game, but he speaks a lot when you pick up these relics. He talks to himself about like the pestilence that happened and the crops failing and the water disappearing and how we took everything for granted and stuff like that. And I think there's like a more, much like anything George Miller touches, I guess, in respect of this franchise, there's a deeper kind of meaning if you want to find it, but that's not maybe the reason you'd play the game.
See, what sounds interesting to me is that why did this need to be a video game? Because you're saying this is as good as you think it can get for a Mad Max thing, and it just sounds like, okay, the plot's not that good and the combat's not that deep. But then it's like, well, why isn't it just a movie? You know, I feel like with Batman, like being like the days of licensed things being bad is essentially like not a fact anymore. It's not
it's no
not a
longer a
foregone
guarantee.
conclusion
It's
going to be bad. But with Batman, you know, people like Batman. A Batman game makes sense. You know, being able to play as Batman makes sense. Being able to play Mad Max isn't necessarily something like seeing the movies. It's not like I need to play this. You know?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, this is the first time they really tried to do something like this, and I don't necessarily disagree that. However, cursorily, it's related to Fury Road. It seems clear like those were trying to be aligned with each other.
Sure, cash in.
Back years, even when the movie finally got off the ground after many years of trying to make it. Yeah, I mean, it's a valid question, and I don't necessarily think this game's for everyone. I feel like a game I really enjoy, like Dying Light, can relate to a lot of people. I feel like even a game like Arkham Knight, which I think is overrated, is still a fun game, and I understand why people like it, and I think it's got great presentation value. I think the reason that I think it's not going to get much better than for Mad Max in this is the same reason why I think you probably couldn't make a 9.5 or a 10 game on The Road. Like, The Road is my favorite post-apocalyptic anything that's ever been made, but it's like really dire and dark, and at some point, like, there's no hope in that world. And Mad Max, there's no hope. The whole story is about him trying to find a place that doesn't even exist, so he doesn't have to live in this world anymore, man. That's what the story's about. You know what I mean?
Because the immediate way to pinprick that theory would be The Last of Us, but there's hope in The Last of Us, so I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. The Last of Us is all about hope.
Yeah.
In a way. It doesn't start out that way, but it starts out with a lot of loss. But I mean, The Last of Us becomes all about hope.
Sure.
And
Hope Solo.
Hope Solo, exactly. So like I'm a little conflicted on Mad Max in terms of like I kind of get why it might not resonate with people. I think it's a bit more about people's sensibilities to worlds that have no redeeming qualities to them, because that's what Mad Max is, and that's why I've always really been drawn to it. It gets a little campy and weird at times, and as things like from that era do. But I think that the game is worth playing. I think if you like games where you check boxes, which is basically what this is, then I think you're really going to like it, because there's a lot of boxes to check. There's super deep customization options in terms of upgrading your character. Well, let me back up. Like, the systems are actually surprisingly deep, and I like them. Although I don't know that everyone would like them. So there's hundreds of challenges that you complete. The challenges can be like kill 10 guys with this thing, eat dog food 5 times, find 30,000 units of water, whatever it is. Yeah. And then for each one you check off, it will just pop up and it'll be like, you completed this one, and then you get an experience point. Then you use the experience points to upgrade your character, and you unlock like higher and higher levels, and like you're ranked. There's like 10 rankings or whatever. And within each ranking is like 10 sub rankings where you can like put your points into like getting more health or doing more damage or finding more loot when you like those kinds of things. So there's like that upgrade system. Then there's like a whole thing about the magnum opus, which is your car, and how you can upgrade that. And there's like, I think 18 different ways you can upgrade that. And each way you upgrade it, there's like, could be up to like a dozen ways to upgrade it within each of those things. So like you're upgrading the fender, you're upgrading the wheels, you're upgrading the tires, you're upgrading like your defenses and all that kind of stuff. So there's that whole thing. Then there's like dozens of cars to find. Like you can jack other gangs' cars and like add them to your collection, use them in races and all those kinds of things to earn more experience points. And then there's there's just a series of things to unlock. There's like fortresses that you unlock and then you build them up and stuff like that. So it's just a game where you're like slowly just becoming more powerful. And you just either have to have the motivation to do that or not. So in each territory there are like gangs running that territory, and so like you have to disrupt their supply chains, you have to find their minefields and destroy them, you have to find their watchtowers, and they put things up called scarecrows that show that they own this territory. You like rip them down with your car. They have like fortresses and own oil encampments where they're like still harvesting oil or water or whatever. You destroy those, and like slowly the map just turns from red to yellow in like these little places. And so it's very Far Cry like, and I love Far Cry. So
yeah, Far Cry's right.
because I think Far Cry just gives you all these boxes to check. There's a lot of shit to do in the game. So it's not, if you're looking for a game with like very literal like Last of Us like plot, you're not going to find that in Mad Max. That's not what Mad Max is about. And so I think that anyone who's looking for something like that doesn't really understand Mad Max, and that's fine, you know. But that's still a valid complaint if that's what you're looking for. I just don't think that you would go into Mad Max looking for that. Fury Road is awesome, and Fury Road is not really about anything. It's about a man and him trying to help these concubines, whatever, get away from this thing. But all of the storytelling is in the aesthetic. It's not in no one's telling
plot.
Exactly. There's no plot. Like there's no.
Fury Road is a 2-hour side quest. And
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, did you like it?
Yeah, I watched it on plane the way movies are meant to be watched, on the back of a Virgin America screen.
Good Lord.
God forbid you put it out day and date digital and I watch it on my TV. The point I'm making there, though, is the fact, and that isn't an insult, but it is like people, you know, at the end, spoilers, Max turns his back and walks away, right, onto his next adventure. You know what I mean? It's totally just like, this isn't about him. This is just like some side thing that popped. The exclamation mark went off as he was walking and got engaged with it.
I think as Mad Max has gone on through these films, like it's become less about Max. Max is almost like an avatar. It's about the world. The world is the story. The world is the main character. So in Fury Road, to me, that movie was awesome. I fucking love that movie. I think the movie's extraordinarily good. But it has very little dialogue. It uses a lot of camera tricks. It's all about like people jumping on the cars and fucking fighting each other. But like that's not really what it's about.
Yeah.
You know? It's a little bit about hope and a little bit about lost hope and a little bit about family and decay and all of these kinds of things. I think the movie's actually a lot deeper than even people give it credit for, but it's not literal. And I think that a lot of that can be found in this game. I wouldn't compare Avalanche's Mad Max with Fury Road. I think Fury Road's an extraordinary movie. I don't think that Mad Max is an extraordinary game at any time, because to answer Greg's question that he asked a while ago, it's like, what does it do extraordinarily well or like do exceptionally well? Probably nothing. You know, but it does everything it does very good, like very well. And I think that's more than a lot of games can say.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing going against it is the Metal Gear thing and the fact that everyone's playing Metal Gear and they came out the same date. But do you think that really is going to affect this game in the sense that how you're describing this, it really sounds like you need to like Mad Max a lot. You like the world, and then you will enjoy it because you enjoy what Mad Max is. Would it be enjoyable to people that aren't Mad Max players if this game had come out in a time when there wasn't other games around?
I think it would have helped just in the sense that, like, if it came out in July, it would have been a little closer to Fury Road. People would have seen Mad Max and they would have bought it, right? So I think that there's some association to sales. And I'm not
even talking about sales, though. I'm talking about, would people enjoy the game? You know,
maybe not.
Now they're not because they're all playing Metal Gear. But I feel like the people that want to play Mad Max, regardless of Metal Gear, are still going to play it because they're Mad Max fans.
Well, I think people are playing. I think more people are playing Mad Max than people realize. And I think that people tweet me all the time about the game they're playing, and I even got one buddy of ours that we know through our shows in the past where reached out to me. He's like, I'm surprised by how much I like Mad Max, and I think that's kind of the feedback that I've been getting is when you see a game along a spectrum where it's getting like 9s and it's getting like 5s, that's not really that common for a AAA game. Usually people settle a little more. There's always an outlier, but people settle a little bit more in some place. And some people like fucking are blown away by this game, which I'm not blown away by it. And some people are like, don't like it at all and think it's boring and sterile. And I don't agree with that either. So no, I think there are probably a prerequisites. I think more than liking Mad Max, because again, I think you can go into this without having ever seen Mad Max and get something out of it. It's more about liking unique and different kind of post-apocalyptic worlds that aren't necessarily trying to shove a story or character down your throat as much as it's trying to shove just an experience down your throat. And I think that there's like, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I'm reading too much into Mad Max generally and always have, but I just feel like there's something about that world that demands some thought. And I think that is juxtaposed intentionally against its clown-like enemies and its over-the-top car combat and all these things that are very easy to understand. And you just have to rectify those two things. And I think that's the whole idea. It's like these fucking gangs are dressed like clowns, basically, and are just jumping from car to car and killing themselves like they don't care. And that doesn't seem to make any sense with a world that is deep and decaying, and there's something to be said about the world and the world that used to be there, but I think that's the idea. Mm-hmm. So I recommend Mad Max. Maybe people will not, if you're not like totally sold on it, maybe wait till it's $40, $30. I'm sure it's going to get discounted pretty severely at some point. So maybe you wait, but I do think timing is everything. I don't understand why they selected this time. I do think it's going to hurt the game. I think it is hurting the game. But I still think the game's doing well. I still expect that old chart on NPD and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. So, I mean, that's Mad Max. I don't know if I did a good job talking about it. That's about as much as we're going to talk about it because I don't expect anyone else to really play it. So we can't do a review, at least a timely one. But I think a lot of people think I'm trying to be contrarian by not playing Metal Gear, and that's going to get into our next topic. Yep. But I am playing Mad Max. I'm excited. I've been excited about Mad Max for a while, and I'm glad that I finally played it. The way I explained it to Greg was that it didn't meet my expectations. If I was expecting something great out of Avalanche, like really, really fantastic out of Avalanche a year ago, and then when they stopped talking about it and things seemed kind of muddled, and I was like, all right, something's wrong with this game. But there's actually not anything wrong with it. It's just is what it is, and
that's the problem.
It does what it does well, and
that's the whole thing. Is just there's nothing wrong with it, but there's nothing great about it. You know what I mean? Like listening to you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great, but I by the time I'm done with Metal Gear or whatever, maybe I jump back into The Witcher if I want those check boxes marked. If I don't want that world, maybe I'll just wait for Just Cause 3 in December, which looks amazing. You know what I mean? Like that's its biggest thing. It's not just Metal Gear. I just think that it's coming out against a bunch of other things where there are games doing.
We're getting to a point where there's a lot of games coming out that are going to be awesome.
Yeah, I will say this though, and I want to say this about The Witcher. And I know it's not going to be a popular thing, but the more I've thought about The Witcher in my time with it, I enjoyed it. But it's like not this be all end all game. Like it's just not. And in my mind, and I think like people are giving its story a little too much credit and its side quests a little too much credit and stuff. I think it's a fun game. I think it's an enjoyable game. I think it's one of the better games of the year for sure. I enjoyed my time with it, but I don't necessarily think Witcher is the high mark of open world role playing games or storytelling at all. And so that's not necessarily a congruent comparison to me in terms of like, well, I'd go back to The Witcher to check these boxes. And I'm like, well, if we're talking about checking boxes, I'm not so sure Witcher does it better than Mad Max, but that's just my opinion. I feel like people are really high on this game. And I'm kind of questioning in some ways why, and that's coming from someone who spent like 80 hours with it. So it's not like I didn't see something in it. I enjoyed it very much.
But I think it's back to what I was saying, right? You're saying the fact that it's among the best games of the year, right? Witcher does something great. Mad Max doesn't sound like it does anything great.
I think Witcher's world is what's great about it, and its characters. Definitely. I mean, I want to be clear that I like The Witcher.
No, you put a bunch of time into it.
I might even like it more than Mad Max, but I'm trying to say in terms of a procedural kind of like I'm looking to just play and check boxes. I'm not so sure if you're just playing these two games that one is necessarily that much better than the other. But that's just my take on it. I will say driving around the car in the wasteland, very satisfying. Very satisfying. That world is very dark and dire, man. I love it. Like these terrible storms just happen out of nowhere too, and you have to like find shelter and so it's a pretty game. They made a pretty game too. But I'm really interested to see what people out there think of it.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people are busy. This is a game that they're going to get to later, and so we'll probably have like kind of a more retroactive conversation about it in the near future, as opposed to like this isn't the game of the right now. This is bad timing. I don't know why Avalanche did that, but yeah, I'd be interested to hear what people think about it.
Yeah. If you're playing it, go over to the forums, kindoffunny.com/forums, please, and make a topic about a thread.
There'll be a topic up about it by now.
Yeah, probably.
And you should
let us know your thoughts.
I don't think you'd like it, but I think you should.
I want to kick the tires on it. Yeah.
Yeah.